"Can we share your fries, sir?" A single mom asked at the cafe, unaware she spoke to a billionaire. The rain had just stopped, leaving the sidewalk slick and shining under the soft light of the late afternoon. Marin stepped into the small lakeside cafe, one hand holding her son's and the other clutching a damp, folded umbrella. The autumn breeze had tangled her blonde hair, and the faint chill lingered on her clothes. "Come on, sweetie," she whispered. 5-year-old Theo looked up at her with sleepy eyes and a tired smile. His tiny boots squeaked softly against the floor as they stepped inside. Warm air greeted them with the scent of roasted coffee beans and crisp French fries. The outdoor seating was soaked, forcing everyone inside. Marin scanned the room, hopeful. Her heart sank. The only available spot was half of a small 2-person table in the back, already taken by a man in a charcoal coat. He sat alone, flipping through a folder, a plate of golden fries in front of him, barely touched. Marin hesitated, then approached the counter. She ordered a small latte and a warm milk. Opening her worn leather wallet, she counted the few coins left. A grocery discount card and a faded baby photo of Theo rested inside. She smiled at the cashier, then turned to scan the cafe once more. The young barista leaned over and said gently, "You can ask the gentleman over there. He seems fine, polite, quiet." Marin hesitated, then walked over. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Would you mind if we sat here?" "Just for a few minutes." The man looked up. His eyes were sharp but unreadable. He studied her for a beat, then glanced at Theo. Without a word, he nodded and gestured toward the empty seat. "Thank you," Marin said, helping Theo into his chair. She handed him his milk, sat down, and sipped her coffee, trying not to show how tired she was. They sat quietly. The man continued reading. Marin removed Theo's raincoat and brushed damp hair from his forehead. The boy's eyes drifted toward the plate of fries. He did not speak, but his longing was obvious. Marin noticed. She leaned down and whispered something. Theo shook his head, a little embarrassed. Marin looked back at the man. Then, with a breath, she sat upright. "Can we share your fries, sir?" she asked, cheeks pink. "I'll pay for them. I just didn't have enough for food today." The man paused mid-page. He looked up at her. For a moment he said nothing. Then he smiled, just barely, and slid the plate toward the center. "They're better when shared anyway," he said. "Thank you," Marin said softly. Theo's face lit up as he reached for a fry, taking it carefully, as if it were precious. The man's smile deepened. For the first time in days, it felt real. Marin rose to grab napkins. Behind the counter, 2 baristas leaned toward each other. "Do you know who that is?" one whispered. "That's Elian Drake. The billionaire? The tech guy." "That's him." Elian heard them but showed no reaction. He exhaled slowly, his faint smile still in place. When Marin returned, unaware of the whispers, she said to Theo, "Say thank you properly, sweetheart." Theo straightened. "Thank you, sir. You're really kind." Elian looked at the boy, then at Marin. He studied them for a long moment, then, for the first time that day, closed his folder and set it aside. They ate together. At first, in silence. Then Theo began chatting about dinosaurs, puddles, and his favorite bedtime story. Marin let him talk freely, sipping her coffee, content. Elian listened. He laughed more than once, a sound unfamiliar yet welcome. When the meal ended, Marin reached into her bag. "I'll pay for our drinks and the fries," she said. The server waved her off. He already took care of it. Marin turned to Elian. She didn't gush or fumble. She simply nodded. "I'll pay it forward. That's how I balance kindness." Elian didn't reply, but the way she said it, grateful, not dependent, stayed with him. They parted without names, without promises, just a shared plate of fries, and laughter that lingered longer than the rain. The October sky was a dull, slate gray, and rain fell in thin, steady lines that tapped gently on the windshield of Elian's car. Parked along a quiet street near a bus stop, he leaned back in the driver's seat, cradling his phone between his ear and shoulder. He often came here to make calls, out of the office, away from boardrooms, for a moment of peace. His assistant's voice droned on, listing meetings and contracts, but Elian's eyes drifted toward the sidewalk. Outside was cold and damp, the kind of day that sank into your bones. Then he saw her. Across the street, under the narrow overhang of a bus shelter, Marin stood with her arms wrapped around a small boy, Theo. The child's cheeks were flushed from the cold, his coat too thin for the wind. Marin's hair was plastered to her face, jeans soaked dark. She was drenched, clearly freezing, but all her attention was on her son. Elian watched, unmoving, as Marin crouched and opened a worn backpack. From it, she pulled out a folded plastic grocery bag. She gently draped it over Theo's head and shoulders, tucking the ends under his chin. It looked silly, like a plastic poncho, but the boy beamed. Then Marin pulled off her own scarf, wrapped it around Theo's neck, and hugged him tight. She stayed fully exposed, rain trailing down her back, her clothes clinging to her skin. Elian's hand moved toward the door handle. Instinct told him to get out, to offer help, but he froze. If I go now, he thought, she'll think it's pity, like I see her as someone to be saved. He let go of the handle. A few minutes later, headlights broke through the rain. The bus arrived. Marin guided Theo aboard. Elian turned off the engine, crossed the street, and quietly boarded the same bus, slipping into a seat near the back. Marin didn't see him. Inside, the bus was damp and quiet, filled with the hiss of brakes, squeaking shoes, and foggy windows. Outside, the world blurred, gray and gold and dripping. Elian sat still, collar up, watching the pair 4 rows ahead. Theo leaned into Marin, eyelids heavy. She cradled him, rubbing slow circles on his back. Her fingers were pale, trembling, but her voice was warm and calm. Then she lifted one hand and formed a rabbit with her fingers, thumb tucked in, 2 fingers pointed forward. The dim bus lights and street lamps cast shadows across the ceiling. "There," she whispered. "Mr. Rabbit's hopping to the moon." Theo giggled softly, reaching up to try. Marin laughed too, a sound thin from cold, but full of life. She was shivering, lips faintly blue, but her eyes shone. Elian watched them, huddled, soaked, tired, and felt something inside him stir. A long-locked part of his heart cracked open. How does she still do that, he wondered. Create magic in this mess? At the next stop, Marin gently lifted Theo, now asleep. She shifted the plastic bag still draped over his head, then bent to carry him on her back. Elian remained seated. He didn't move as she stepped into the drizzle, disappearing down the street, her shoulders hunched against the wind, Theo's arms wrapped around her. As they passed under a street lamp, their shadows stretched along a brick wall. One small figure, one larger, and a flickering plastic bag that caught the light like a halo. He didn't call out, didn't follow, but something deep within him shifted, and he knew. He'd never forget the image of a woman who used a plastic bag, her bare hands, and the quiet magic of her voice, to keep the only light in her world from going out. The library stood quietly on the corner of a sleepy street in the outer edge of town, nestled between a laundromat and an old bakery. Faded bricks, cracked windows, and a hand-painted sign gave it the charm of something forgotten, yet still alive. Elian stood across the street, hands in his coat pockets, taking it all in. He had asked his assistant to look into Marin, not to invade her privacy, but simply to find out where she worked. No addresses, no personal details, just a name connected to a job. He had not expected the answer to be a small, underfunded community library with a children's reading program barely held together by volunteers. He crossed the street without a plan, stepped inside quietly, and was greeted by the soft rustle of pages and the faint scent of crayon wax and old paper. It was warm in a worn-out kind of way, like a childhood blanket that had seen better days but still comforted you just the same. In the far corner, past the rows of donated books and slightly leaning shelves, Marin sat at a child-sized table surrounded by a small group of children. She was hunched over her sketchpad, her blonde hair loosely tied back, a red-colored pencil in hand. Her sleeves were rolled to her elbows, and smudges of color decorated the back of her wrist. Alien did not move. He stood behind a shelf, just out of sight, watching her without understanding why. She was drawing. On the table lay pages filled with soft, whimsical sketches, scenes of a woman walking through the rain with a little boy under an umbrella made of stars, a child laughing at shadow puppets on the ceiling, a small, crooked house with light pouring from the windows into a night full of wonder. They were simple. They were beautiful. They were her life. And somehow, more than that, when Marin leaned back to stretch, she finally noticed him. Her eyes widened briefly, surprise flickering across her face, but she didn't look uncomfortable. "Alien," she said, setting her pencil down. "I hope this isn't inappropriate," he replied, stepping closer. "I was curious." "About what?" He gestured toward the drawings. "Do you always draw your own life?" She looked at the pages, then back at him with a soft, tired smile. "Some of it. And some of it is what I wish my life had looked like. I draw the moments I never had time to make happen." There was something in the way she said it. Not bitter, not self-pitying, just honest. He stepped closer, picking up a sketch of the boy and the shadow puppet. "You could publish these," he said. "They're good. More than good." Marin chuckled lightly, then shrugged. "I did try. Once. Years ago." He waited. "When I still thought dreams were something you grow into, not grow out of." The words landed in Alien's chest like a stone. He had once been a boy who believed in dreams too, who built companies out of ideas scribbled in notebooks, who stayed up all night coding because he believed something new could change the world. But, somewhere along the way, ambition had devoured wonder, and schedules had replaced stories. She saw it in his silence and smiled again, gently. "It's okay," she said. "Life moves. You adjust." A small girl with tangled braids came bouncing across the room and threw her arms around Marin's leg. "Miss Marin, I finished my book. I read all the pages." "That's amazing," Marin said, crouching to the girl's level. "You're becoming a real bookworm." The girl beamed. "Your drawings make my bad days better." Marin's face softened, her hand brushing a curl out of the girl's eyes. Alien watched it all, quietly. Still holding the sketch in his hand, he did not say what he was thinking, that he had seen more meaning in the last 5 minutes here than in 100 shareholder meetings, that he had forgotten how powerful quiet joy could be, that her art and her presence were not just comforting, they were necessary. Instead, he set the sketch down, met her eyes, and nodded once. He did not know what came next, but in that moment, for the first time in a very long time, he wanted to know. The wind was still, but the sky above the city pulsed with the kind of heaviness that always came before rain. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the towers of glass and steel, casting long, golden shadows across the stone paths of the park near Alien's headquarters. He sat slumped on a weathered bench under an oak tree, his coat unbuttoned, tie loosened, hands clasped between his knees. His head was bowed, as if gravity itself had finally claimed him. For once, he did not care how he looked, who passed by, or what headlines might follow. He had just walked out of a grueling 5-hour meeting that ended in the collapse of a multi-million-dollar deal, months of negotiations gone in a single sentence. Worse than the loss was the emptiness that followed. Not frustration, not even anger, just silence. He closed his eyes, trying to breathe, but even that felt like work. A soft crunch of gravel broke the quiet. He ignored it. Then a voice, familiar, low and kind. "You look like someone who skipped lunch." He opened his eyes and turned his head. Marin stood just a few feet away, a tote bag of groceries in one hand, her coat buttoned all the way up, wisps of blonde hair brushing her cheeks in the wind. She wasn't smiling, not exactly, but there was warmth in her expression, and something else too. Recognition. Not of the CEO, not of the billionaire, but of the human being on the bench. "I'm a mom," she added, easing herself down beside him. "We detect that like smoke." He blinked, surprised. Then, to his own astonishment, he laughed. Just a short, quiet sound, but real. Marin reached into her bag and pulled out a granola bar. It was cracked nearly in half, still wrapped in foil, like it had been at the bottom of her bag for days. She held it out to him without ceremony. "Emergency snack," she said. "Best I've got." He took it, their fingers brushing for a moment. "Thanks." "You're welcome." They unwrapped their halves in silence and ate side by side. There was no pressure to talk, no polite small talk or prying questions. The bench creaked slightly under their weight. A flock of birds flew low across the treetops. The sun slipped further behind the skyline, its last rays dancing on the windows of distant buildings. Elian glanced at her from the corner of his eye. She was looking straight ahead, calm, her posture relaxed, as if this, sitting next to a weary man with too much on his mind, was something natural to her. Her presence was quiet but grounding, like stepping into a warm room after the cold. He wanted to say something, about the failed deal, about the board's disappointment, about how, despite all the success, he still sometimes felt like that uncertain kid from nowhere, trying not to fall apart in front of the world. But he said nothing, and still, it felt like she understood. They sat that way for a while, the city growing darker around them. Then, as she rose to her feet, brushing crumbs from her coat, Marin turned to him and said softly, "You're allowed to fall apart, you know. Even machines need maintenance." Elian looked up at her, his throat tight. She smiled, not pitying, just real. "See you around," she added, adjusting the grocery bag on her shoulder. He nodded, his voice gone for the moment. She walked away, her footsteps light but certain, disappearing down the path lined with autumn leaves. Elian sat there a little longer, watching the place where she had been. He felt no sudden clarity, no dramatic realization, just lighter, like someone had seen him, not his resume, not his title, but him, and chosen to sit beside him anyway. He looked down at the empty wrapper in his hand and smiled. Sometimes, the smallest acts of care were the ones that stayed with you the longest. The air inside the bakery was thick with the scent of warm cinnamon, melting sugar, and baked bread. It was nearing closing time, and the shop had quieted down to a few lingering customers and the soft hum of ovens cooling. Behind the counter, Marin moved slowly, wiping surfaces, boxing leftover pastries, her movements precise but sluggish. She had come straight from a long shift at the library. No dinner, no break, just enough time to change her shirt in the back room and tie her hair into a loose ponytail. Her hands trembled slightly as she counted change from the till, her skin pale under the fluorescent light. Elian stepped in with the intention of grabbing something quick. He had just finished a late meeting and remembered the bakery stayed open past 7. He saw her before she saw him. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes hollow with exhaustion, yet she still managed to thank each customer with a tired but genuine smile. She turned to grab a tray behind the counter, then suddenly, without warning, her knees buckled. Her body crumpled behind the register with a soft thud. "Elian!" "Help!" someone shouted. He was already moving. By the time a staff member reached for the phone to call an ambulance, Elian had Marin in his arms. She was burning with fever and frighteningly light. "Do not call an ambulance," he said firmly but calmly. "I'm taking her to my office building. There's medical staff on site." He carried her out, shielding her from the cold night air, whispering reassurances even though she could not hear them. Inside the sleek, dimly lit wellness suite on the top floor of Elian's building, Marin lay unconscious on a leather sofa. An on-call nurse had quickly set up a saline IV and checked her vitals. She was dehydrated, overheated, and worn past her limit. Elian sat nearby, silent, guilt pressing into his chest. A soft knock broke the silence. The door opened, and a small figure rushed in. Theo. He was holding his mother's bag in both arms. Someone, likely the bakery manager, had brought him over. Elian stood to meet him, but the boy didn't pause. He made a beeline for Marin, climbing up onto the sofa beside her. His eyes widened, but there were no tears, only focus. Theo set the bag down, unzipped it, and pulled out a tiny thermos. He poured the contents into a paper cup and placed it on the table. Honey water, lukewarm. Next, he grabbed a small towel and walked to the nearby sink. He dampened it with practiced care, wrung it out, and returned to gently lay it across his mother's forehead. Finally, he pulled the blanket up to her shoulders, smoothing it with both hands. Then, he leaned in close, his little face just inches from hers, and whispered, "When Mom sleeps, I protect her, 'cause she always protects me." Elian turned away. It was too much. Not the sight of the boy. There was nothing pitiful about Theo, but the weight of what it meant. The calm, patient love in his movements, the way he cared for her with the seriousness of someone twice his age. This was not a child playing nurse. This was a boy who had learned, far too young, what it meant to step up when the world stepped back. Elian's throat tightened. They do not need saving, he thought. They just need someone who will not walk away. When Marin stirred sometime later, she blinked up at the unfamiliar ceiling, then turned her head slightly to see Elian seated across from her, still in his suit, still waiting. Theo had curled up at her side, asleep now, one small hand resting over hers. Marin tried to sit up, wincing. Elian moved forward quickly, but gently. "Do not push yourself," he said. "You just need rest. Nothing more." Her voice was hoarse. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "You don't have to apologize," he said, cutting her off, his tone soft but firm. He paused, searching her face for the right words. "You're not alone, Marin," he said. "You never were. You just needed someone to notice." She looked at him, truly looked. Not surprised, not overwhelmed, just quiet, grateful, seen. And in that silence, Elian knew with a certainty that settled deep in his chest, he was not going anywhere. The offer came quietly, without ceremony. One morning, after dropping Theo off at preschool, Marin arrived home to find a thin folder waiting on her doorstep. No logo, no envelope, just her name written in soft blue ink. Inside was a proposal, a part-time creative consultant role on a children's storytelling app being developed by one of Elian's companies. The note clipped to the top read, "No strings, just an idea. You're already doing the work, this just makes it official. E." She reread it 5 times. Then again, slower. It was not a gift. It was not a rescue. It was an opportunity, real, structured, and clear. The project details were thoughtful and well-planned. Weekly hours, flexible scheduling, a team of editors and illustrators, and a clear creative direction. It was professional, and yet personal. After 2 days of consideration and quiet prayer over a mug of tea, Marin accepted. Her first day began with a key card and a tour of the design wing. Hushed hallways, vibrant concept boards, the hum of minds at work. Her desk was small but perfect, tucked beside a wide window overlooking the courtyard. A sketch pad and a set of artist pens had been placed there in a neat bundle, like someone had thought carefully about what she would need before she even arrived. The nameplate read simply, "Marin Caldwell, Creative Development." She touched it with her fingertips, almost in disbelief. The work was natural to her. She reviewed storylines, created character sketches, drafted visual samples for the user interface, tasks she had only dreamed of doing one day in some distant life. Every so often, Elian would appear, not as a looming executive, but as a curious mind. Sometimes he brought feedback on layout, other times he simply set a steaming mug of ginger tea on her desk with a quiet, "Heard you didn't sleep much. Moms forget themselves too often." He never lingered, just smiled, then vanished down the hallway. Still, those moments stayed with her longer than she expected. She caught herself looking toward the door more than once. One afternoon, she was sketching a forest scene, soft leaves, glowing fireflies, a mother owl tucking her baby into a nest, when she sensed someone behind her. She turned her head and nearly jumped. Elian stood there, close, too close, really, but still, unassuming. He was watching the drawing. "Oh," she murmured, startled. "I didn't hear you." I didn't want to interrupt. Their eyes met. For a second longer than what was normal. Neither of them moved. Then, almost at the same time, they turned away, both suddenly preoccupied with anything else. Papers, windows, the time. Marin smiled to herself. So did Elian. Whatever it was, it stayed unspoken. But it was there. Days passed. Marin worked steadily, becoming part of the creative rhythm of the team. Her ideas were well received. Her sketches were passed along to developers and animators. The app began to take shape, and with it, something inside her did too. She felt seen, not as a woman surviving, but as a woman contributing. Elian became a quiet presence in that world, not frequent, but deliberate. When he appeared, it was never grand, never to check up or to manage. It was as if he simply wanted to witness, to make sure she knew she belonged. There were moments, glances, shared jokes over font choices. A time he reached past her to plug in her charger, and their hands touched, just briefly, just enough. Those moments stayed suspended in the air long after they ended. But nothing was rushed, nothing was named. One evening, as she packed up her things, Marin paused at the window by her desk. Outside, the lights in the courtyard flickered on, and shadows of leaves danced across the pavement. She looked down at her badge, at her folder of sketches, at her nameplate. She had a place here, and not because someone pitied her, because someone believed she was good enough to be here. That changed everything. The new apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a creaky floorboard in the hallway. But to Marin and Theo, it felt like a dream. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the worn hardwood and soft beige walls. The air held a faint scent of lemon cleaner and fresh paint. On the tiny balcony, Marin had placed a clearance sale plant, and the kitchen still smelled faintly of pancakes from that morning. Theo stood in his new room, eyes wide as he stared at the desk where a green backpack sat, zipped neatly. "Is this mine?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "All yours," Marin smiled, kneeling beside him. "And it comes with matching shoes." He looked down at his sneakers, brand new, white with blue lightning bolts. He wiggled his toes. "They feel like running fast." "You're gonna need them," she said. "Kindergarten's serious business." Theo laughed, then hugged her tightly. "I like our new home, Mommy. It smells like pancakes, and your hugs." Later that week, Marin taped Theo's drawings to the wall. Stick figure families, rainbow skies, one surprisingly good dinosaur in boots. She stood back, admiring them like prized artwork. That afternoon, Elian stopped by. He had texted earlier, asking if she had a minute to review some feedback on the children's app. When she said yes, he arrived holding papers and a small bag. "For Theo," he said as she opened the door. Inside were crayons, markers, and a stack of fresh drawing paper. Marin raised an eyebrow. "You know you're setting a dangerous precedent, right? He'll have to design our company logo for free someday," Elian replied with a small grin. Theo peeked from his room, then ran forward. "What's that?" "Supplies," Elian said. "For our top artist." Theo took the bag with both hands but didn't open it. Instead, he looked up at Elian. "Wait," he said, then darted back into his room. He returned with a folded drawing, creased and soft around the edges. He handed it to Elian gently. "It's us, from when we met, when you shared your fries." Elian unfolded it. 3 stick figures sat at a round table beneath a glowing yellow light. One small figure smiled wide. One had long hair and a coffee cup, and the third had a plate of fries so large it nearly filled the page. Above the man's head, a speech bubble read, "They're better when shared anyway." Elian felt something tug in his chest. Before he could speak, Theo looked at him and said, "Thank you for believing in my mom. I know she's a superhero, but sometimes superheroes need help too." The room fell quiet. Marin, having just walked in, stopped when she heard. Her eyes shimmered. Ilian knelt beside Theo, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You know," he said, "I think she might be the strongest superhero I've ever met." Theo smiled proudly. Later, after Theo went to draw with his new markers, Marin remained in the living room, thoughtful. Ilian lingered near the door, still holding the drawing. It felt heavier than it looked, like something sacred. Marin glanced toward the wall where Theo had taped another picture of that same cafe moment. "You didn't have to bring him anything," she said softly. "I wanted to," Ilian answered. She nodded, eyes gentle. "He gets it from you, that heart." Their eyes met, no words, just something shared in the silence. Outside, the sky shifted toward gold. Inside, between fading sunlight and scattered crayon boxes, something unspoken settled in the quiet. Kindness, connection, and maybe, slowly, the beginning of something more. The air held that unmistakable feeling of late autumn, cool, crisp, with a faint scent of fallen leaves and golden light softening the edges of the day. Change did not feel like a threat anymore. It felt like a promise. The Children's Tech Expo buzzed with energy. Booths stretched across the venue, bursting with color and laughter. Near the main stage, a banner fluttered gently. "Little worlds, stories that grow with you." Marin stood just off stage, watching Theo climb the steps in his blue sweater, sneakers squeaking softly. In one hand, he carried a bundle of colored markers. On the giant screen behind him, his drawing came to life in real time. He started with a house, simple, cozy. "That's my mom's house," he said into the mic. "She makes up stories and pancakes shaped like stars." The audience chuckled. Next came a figure with wild yellow hair. "That's my mom too," he said proudly. Then he drew a man with a long coat holding a plate. A speech bubble floated above the figure. "They're better when shared anyway." More laughter. Marin felt her throat tighten. "And that's Ilian," Theo explained. "He shared his fries. Then he helped my mom make a story app. He's my friend who wears serious shoes." Even Ilian, standing beside Marin, cracked a grin. Finally, Theo drew a giant plate of fries. "My favorite part," he said, "because that's where everything started." After the event, the three of them stepped back into the quiet rhythm of the city. The sun was lower, the breeze sharper. Marin wrapped her scarf closer. Theo skipped beside her, holding her hand. Ilian walked at her other side, one hand in his coat pocket, the other carrying a bag of leftover treats from the expo. They did not speak much, but silence had never felt more comfortable. As they reached the corner, Theo looked up. "Can we go back? To the cafe?" Marin glanced at Ilian. He raised an eyebrow. "Your call." She nodded. The cafe was quieter than she remembered. Same warm smells, same tiny tables, same creaky floorboard near the counter. Marin felt the memory wash over her, the awkward moment, the question that changed everything. Ilian ordered fries before anyone sat down. When the plate arrived, it was full to the brim. Marin blinked. "Ambitious," she said. "I learn from the best," he replied. Theo reached out, then paused, his tone suddenly serious. "We have to share again. That's how everything started." Marin let out a soft laugh. "You're right." Ilian looked at her, not expectant, just present. She picked up the plate, slid it across the table and said gently, "They still taste better when shared, don't they?" Ilian smiled, not with charm, not for show, just honestly. He nodded, and that was enough. No big speeches, no labels, just the quiet decision to stay in each other's lives. Outside the window, the sky glowed amber, the lake catching the fading light. From the street, through the cafe's glass, someone might have seen them. A woman with gold-streaked hair, a boy with bright eyes, and a man finally at ease. They sat close. They laughed.